Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cheri, or your dysgraphia consultant. I'm here today with Meghan Fox from WooTherapy. Welcome, Meghan. I just happen to have my Woo tape right here.
Nice.
So,
I'm glad you got it.
thank you. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Of course, and thank you for having me. I just love chatting with other professionals, and it's been so fun to get to know some people. So I'm glad we have a little extra time today to share about our journeys.
Yeah. I understand that your children are napping. Isn't it blessed to be able to do something and occupy your time while the children are napping? It's not like it was when my kids were babies.
No.
No, so many more things to do. So tell me a little bit about your process and how you became an occupational therapist.
Okay, so I think you'll appreciate this because I know you're spiritual as well. So honestly, I say it fell into my lap, but honestly, I know it's, a greater plan than that, and just kind of the steps that led me up to it. So basically, I thought I was going to become a physical therapist. And so in my undergrad, I did kinesiology. I had all those background classes that I would need to go to OT school. And as I started getting closer and closer to the process of applying to PT school, the courses became less and less appealing. Physics, organic chemistry, no. Okay, so let me go talk to my advisor and see what we can do about this, because I was panicked. It's okay, I thought I was going this way, and just doesn't seem like my personality whatsoever. So
you just said something. I didn't realize physical therapists had to take organic chem.
It was just a bunch of weird, too much science for me. I liked science, but I liked more of those anatomy, physiology courses. And so when it began to get really technical, I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Okay. But no, I didn't realize they needed to take organic chem. There we go. All right.
My mind might be a little fuzzy. That was 15, I don't know how long ago, but maybe it wasn't organic chem, but I'm pretty sure it was actually bio, some sort of chemistry and physics. Anyways, so I went to talk to my advisor, and she's like, basically, if you just want to graduate with your bachelor's, you could go on to be a PE teacher or a personal trainer. And I was like, don't really think that those fit me either, my interests and personality. So then it was kind of just natural. She's like, well, have you heard of occupational therapy? And I didn't know the extent to what it had to offer by any means. So that was a huge blessing in disguise, the possibilities with that. But what I did know from my grandma had suffered several strokes, and my brother grew up with developmental delays. He saw speech and OT for many, many years when we were kids. So I had some working knowledge of it, but it wasn't ever something that popped in my head to be like, oh, I want to go do that. But as she explained it and how it really went along with a lot of the coursework I had already done, I was like, cool, that seems like actually a perfect match for my interests and personalities. So it ended up obviously working out, and pretty thankful.
It's funny, you just sparked this whole series of memories going on in my brain, telling me about your history, because my first bachelor's degree is biochemistry.
Oh, how did that work out for you?
I'm an OT today. and you mentioned organic chem, and the hair on the back of my head went straight up. It is definitely a tough course.
Yeah, it was I don't know. That's just not how I wanted to spend my time trying to figure out what all that meant.
Yeah.
Or how it even related to PT, honestly. I don't know.
It really does, because it pulls back in it's the the chemical side of the Krebs cycle. So it does fit, but it was one of those things like, oh my gosh, organic chem. No wonder I didn't want to be a physical therapist. Okay. But I didn't make that connection. So, okay. So you ended up in school-based OT. How did that happen?
So I'm originally from the Midwest. I don't know if I told you that.
Okay.
So then when I did grad school, I came out to California at USC.
Okay.
That was a 2-year master's program. And then I stayed, I actually first got into like a sensory clinic.
It's like the AIRS clinic out there?
Like a similar style, but it wasn't run by anyone associated with USC or AIRS specifically.
Okay.
It's interesting. On the West Coast, specifically California, there's like sensory clinics are just rampant. Like,
oh, are they?
Oh yeah, like they're very
few and
popular.
Far between here.
Oh no, it's like probably like every 10 miles you can find one. You know, like yeah, that's what a lot of people are doing out here.
Oh, so, okay.
And I don't know if that's like more because the research has, started and evolved out here. And so people haven't spread really far with it. They've just kind of set up shop. But yeah, it's very, very, very popular. So started 2 years in a clinic, which was a wonderful experience. Worked with some great therapists. And it really gave me a nice foundational background to get into school-based.
It would.
I ended up moving from the area where I was living to a different part of Southern California. So when I transitioned, that's when I was looking for new jobs. And I think the appeal of school-based was like, oh, the time off and the schedule and, the hours and stuff. So, and I just knew I always wanted to work with kids. And so I was like, well, I'll try something new as well. So yeah, so now I've been in school-based. This is my 10th school year, believe it or not.
10th school year.
Yeah.
So what is your caseload like? I hear so many horror stories of OTs having 100 kids on their caseload and things like that. So what do you think? What is your caseload like? What kind of diagnosis are you seeing in California?
So it ebbs and flows every year, based on our sites. So I'd say I waffle anywhere between 40 and 50 on my caseload.
That's a reasonable number compared to some.
Yeah, especially because the treatments range anywhere from a consult to 1 to 2 times a week for 30 minutes. So yeah, I'd say right now it's pretty manageable. Yeah.
And what kind of diagnosis are you coming up with that you're, what are the referrals for?
Yeah. So one of my sites, I'm at primarily 2 sites. So one of them is 2 preschool special day classes. So about 50% of my caseload is that 3 to 5 population.
Okay.
And they're coming in with anything from Down syndrome to autism to just more of a speech and developmental delay.
So they're coming through the 0 to 2 system and getting converted over into like a Head Start program?
Yeah, it's actually, so once they turn 3, they're actually in school. Yeah, so we don't call it Head Start. I know there are some other Head Start programs, so that might even be slightly before they're getting into.
Yeah, usually Head Start starts at 3 years old after they graduate from the 0 to 2 early intervention.
Okay. So
yeah. You're getting that whole gamut of developmental delay kind of diagnoses.
Yeah, from those preschoolers. And then, the rest of my caseload looks like I have a few children with CP, some visually impaired, and then my gen ed kids that receive additional supports likely have a specific learning disability, ADHD.
Okay. So you have a really good gamut of
Mm-hmm.
people you get to help every day. That's
Exactly.
amazing.
Yes.
And
It's a
how
good thing.
has this invention, the WooTape, impacted your treatment? Like, how did you come up with this? How is it impacting the handwriting? You know, the whole gamut around how did this come about?
Yeah. So early on when I started, just a little background, our district hadn't employed their own therapist. So it was all, they were contracted services.
Okay.
So when I was the second wave of therapists to get hired as district employees. And so through that transition, I was working with a ton, how do I want to say this? A lot more gen ed students that needed additional supports than I am now.
Okay.
Because those kids, we've been implementing a lot of MTSS, RTI type stuff. So
Okay.
as being district therapists, it's a lot easier to do that than the contracted ones are just coming in to service the kids. So a lot of times they were on more restrictive service levels just based on getting those supports because they weren't built into the programming of the classrooms and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, at that time when I had a lot more gen ed kids, I was having a huge problem with carryover. The kids could do all the skills fine within my environment, and then they'd get back to class and they wouldn't have, even though I would give them most of the resources and supplies they needed, the kids wouldn't be consistently using the paper that I had provided. They wouldn't be the visual checklist of how is my handwriting going. They'd be completing charts and Venn diagrams with these big open spaces. And I'm like, I've been trying to explain to you that these children require visual boundaries. And, so I was trying to think of what's a quick, easy way that I could support this child, um, give them those visual boundaries and not a cumbersome, difficult way. So that's kind of was the mother of invention there, because I felt like the tape provided a way to mimic some of the types of adaptive paper that I was using in therapy.
Mm-hmm. So you were liking the 3-lined papers.
Yeah, I just feel like most of the kids I work with, I mean, it's pretty broad generalization, but they require that dashed midline to support their proportions and their sizing. So a lot of times I'll get a kid, if they're just writing on notebook paper, because that's what 3rd and 4th graders are provided, their A's, their lowercase A's will touch the top and the bottom line. Like they just don't have a visual regard that it should be smaller. So even if they're in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and they're having those challenges, I want to provide them that dash midline. So that's kind of.
So you're putting this right on the filler paper that they use in the classroom.
Sometimes, if it's like for a full sheet, I would just say use more of an alternative paper.
Okay.
That's probably not the best use of the tape because
it's expensive.
It's expensive, yeah. And you could either just quickly do a dashed line for them if you want them to use the same paper, or it's more of them not wanting to feel different, just kind of add that for them. Really, I'm thinking more of like English language arts where they're comparing and contrasting different things and they have like a chart and it's just blocked out. Or the math programming is they want them to explain their answer and they're just giving them a chunk of space. They're not giving them any lines to regard where to put their words. So in that instance, they're working in their math notebook, they're solving the problem, and then put down 2 lines of WooTape so they can write their response on how they came up with that answer.
Okay. I haven't broken the seal. What kind of surface is the tape compared to paper?
It's really smooth. It's pretty similar, but when you have it on paper, you're going to feel it like there's like a slight tactile, you'll get some feedback from it.
Okay.
Yeah. And especially if like the pencil slides off the tape, you definitely feel like, oh, my pencil went too far. If it's supposed to be a letter that's sitting on the line, or you want to keep, yeah. So I love that component, that there's a tactile response.
Do you feel that the lowercase, the 5 lowercase letters, the G, J, P, Q, and Y, cause concern with the kids that because they go off the tape, or do they appreciate it?
I think they like it because they know that, oh, those are supposed to go under the line. So
the visual or the tactile feel is helping them.
Yeah, it triggers them into being like, oh, I did it the way I was supposed to for that letter.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So out of necessity, with the things that you were doing in the classroom, trying to make it easier for the classroom, get carryover, WooTape was invented.
Exactly.
Is there another tool that you find from a DIY standpoint that is absolutely one of those things that you love to use?
Yes. So just a single tool, not like a treatment kind of plan, but a single tool, especially related to handwriting. This is something that a therapist I worked with at my first job that I was telling you about introduced it to me, and I still use it to this day. It's literally, I wish I had one right here. It's a piece of construction paper, but it's cut out like a magnifying glass. And so, yeah, you cut it out, I laminate it, and it's literally like a piece of paper that looks like a magnifying glass. And
so when you laminate it, do you cut out the center part, or do you keep the laminate over the center part?
Yeah, you can keep, well, I have it both, because it can get a little foggy because the idea is you want the child to be looking at their letters, being a handwriting detective, to say, oh, are all your letters sitting on the line? And they have to scan across their handwriting. Or did you remember to put a space between each letter? And they'll use their magnifying glass and then put a finger between each set of words. So that's just a DIY thing that has stuck with me, and it's really effective.
Cool. Now, so everybody knows that is listening to this, Meghan is currently taking Handwriting Brain Body Disconnect, the course. When we get to that assignment, you are putting that assignment in the private Facebook group, just so that you're already
I'm ahead of the game.
Something to share. So anyway, that's a great idea. I love it. I like the idea of the option of having the center piece cut out versus some of it having it in there, because that effect of having the glass when you have the transparency to remain behind gives a different effect than when it's all cut out. So that can,
if you can find a laminate, like a laminating pouch or whatever, that is clear enough where the kid can see through. I think it's kind of a fun, like, if they feel like they really are
like a glass, right? But on the same token, it's nice to have the one with a kid who's really challenged, that it's not there to have that distortion. So I like that. Great idea.
Thank you.
So that was the tool. Now, what is your favorite activity that you like to do with the kids?
Okay, so I, again, don't want to make a broad generalization, but every kid, so my thing is, I need the kid to buy in, immediately when the session starts, because I basically have 20 to 30 minutes with them. So the easiest way for me to get them to buy in is an obstacle course. And so with that, if they're at the cognitive and physical ability level to set it up themselves, I'm happy to let them do that. But like I shared, a lot of my kids are that preschool age. So I don't even, if need be, if they're into it, I don't try to change the activity, because I know what I'm doing with them is building a ton of skills they need. So if they're into it, I stick with it. But so at that level, I just do really basic, like 3-step things. So the first step is always something like vestibular related, log rolls, somersaults, wheelbarrow walking, and then they have to go retrieve something. And so if they're at the level where I'm working on attention, I'll tell them, okay, say it's a puzzle, for instance, I'll say, get the helicopter. And then they have to do that vestibular piece. So the whole time they're thinking about, what was I supposed to get? And they have to go retrieve the helicopter. And when they come back to put it in the puzzle, they're doing that proprioceptive work, crawling, like or tunnel, those types of things. So I'm really basically with that activity, just trying to target all those foundational skills that they're eventually going to need to do handwriting, that bilateral coordination, the midline crossing, core, upper extremity, hand strengthening, even those executive functioning skills that really come to play into the handwriting later, the initiation, the planning and organization, that goal-oriented task, like this is a beginning, middle, and end, and now I've finished it. So how does that make me feel? And so it's super effective with preschoolers because
those are fun activities. Those are fun.
So
they're there just to have fun. They're not ready to be sitting down and doing anything more than that 5 minutes of reading at the beginning of their preschool session.
Totally. So at 3 years old, even though they're in a preschool setting, I still fully believe it should be play-based. The skills that they need should be developed through play. So that's why I really love working with those two classes so much. Everyone gives me a hard time. Oh, you just play all day. I'm like, well, there's a lot of theory and attention and planning that goes behind the activities I play. But I do get to play all day. So
do you have an integrated 3 to 5, or do you pull them out?
Depends on the child and what their levels are. So it's interesting, and I think it works. So we have a preschool assessment team. So they're the ones that are doing all the intakes. And they basically decide what level of service the child needs. And some of those kids that are on the fence, where it's like, they can't cut, but at the same time, they're 3 and they've never been in a preschool where they're exposed to that. So let's put them in, have the OT be a part of the classroom. So it's not like, some years I do where it's a very specific time slot where like, this 30 minutes, I'm just here to help the entire class. Right now, my caseload's a little too heavy for that. So I'll go in for those individual kids that have been identified as needing that extra support. But sometimes it's just like getting that exposure. And because I've worked with these classrooms for so long, the teachers and the paraprofessionals know what I'm looking for when those skills come up. And they're really great about carrying over what I've instructed them. I've been working with them for 8 years. So
I did a 3 to 5. Actually, I guess it was our pre-K classroom. One of my first years doing this. I've been doing this around 10 years myself. And the first year I was going into this classroom and pulling this one kid out, and he wasn't getting anywhere. I talked to the teacher. I'm like, can I just like work in the classroom and be part of his centers? And then she was talking to me. She's like, can't you be a center? I'm like, sure, I have the time. So I would actually do one activity that I was preparing, and she prepared a whole bunch of other centers, and I saw every single one of the kids in the classroom.
That's awesome. I think.
And I always try to create my activity around her theme of the week.
Perfect.
So.
And you're still doing that type of intervention, or no?
No, I am seeing all cyber kids.
Okay.
So I'm not even doing virtual cyber either. I'm doing face-to-face cyber. So my kids are the ones that, when they're trying to do OT, they're not paying attention when it's a cyber one-on-one situation, and they're needing much more hands-on. So I go to their home where they go to school, and we're problem solving environmental modifications and handwriting and looking at it from that posture, so that when they come back in the classroom that they can integrate and engage better. So I've done a lot of seating desks in the home and figuring out where the computer should be compared to where the chair is, and that kind of piece to start, and then working a lot on handwriting. And
Cool.
I've got one kiddo who I still cannot get to remember his letters, and he's in 7th grade. We have such a visual memory issue, but that's another task. That would be one of those greatest challenges, which is my next question, is what is your biggest challenge? You have the preschool and you have school-based. What is the biggest challenge with the two different environments that you find as an OT coming in to the classroom?
So I previously mentioned one of my biggest challenges, which led me to invent the WooTape, was that carryover.
The carryover. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's more for my gen ed kids that worked so hard in that one-to-one setting. So when they get to that point where they're kind of mastered the handwriting goals I've written just in a one-to-one, you know, I try to spend a month or two making sure those are carried over in the class, but it's still at the same service level I was providing, which is only once a week for 30 minutes or something like that. So then it really falls onto the teacher. Sometimes the kids have a paraprofessional working with them, but not always. Yeah. And so it's difficult to be a teacher these days. The class size,
difficult. I embrace them. I don't know how they do what they do.
The class size and curriculum alone, what they're expected to get through in a year, it's like, I mean, I can see why they say they don't have time to implement these things, but at the same time, most people say they get into teaching to impact one life, you know, one child. And so what if this was the one child that needs the most impact? So like, it's just overcoming their overwhelm, supporting them as much as I can with the time that I'm given. That's kind of a challenge.
So part of that challenge question then is, you're now part of the staff for that particular school district.
Yeah.
Going from contract to staff, how did you see your job change?
I was never a contractor.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but what I did notice was, and this is to no fault of, you know, anyone's, it was just a pure observation, is that a lot of these kids, I felt like, were being over-serviced.
Okay.
Because those contractors are getting paid
for one-to-one service. They're not getting paid for RTI services.
Well, yeah, and however it worked, most of the kids were 45-minute sessions.
Oh.
And sometimes 2 times 45 a week. And so that's just a huge amount of time outside of the classroom, where they're now missing all their academic instruction, you know. And so I don't know exactly what those services look like delivered. I assumed that they were pullouts based on what the IEP said when I got them. But, you know, if they're pushing into the classroom for a majority of that time, okay, I can maybe see it. Maybe half of a session, work on those skills independently, and then try and help them generalize it for a period. But gosh, I just think, I guess what affected me is that it was every single child. So to me, that doesn't represent an IEP. It's not individualized. It's just a blanket service that they're applying to every kid.
Yeah, so I don't see a lot of 45-minute sessions in my area. A lot of them are 30. I see mine at the in their home for an hour, only because I'm not pulling out of the classroom. They've already had their classroom instruction done, and mom has the time. I'm doing a lot of working with the child, then talking with mom. So I'm often their time doing consulting work.
Exactly.
As part of the sessions, and since mom is the one that is doing a lot of the hands-on type of instruction, especially in the elementary level, they're needing a lot of support. You were talking about the Venn diagrams, and I wrote that down because one of the things that I noticed was everything was too small. For these kids that are struggling, everything's too small. Making things bigger is helping them. And then I use a tape idea with something else that I do, but I just make it out of a sheet of sticker paper, like label paper, and just cut the size that I need. But I like this because it's not as much to cut.
Yeah. Well, and you can just tear it. I mean, some people have asked, like, does it come with a tape dispenser, or do you use scissors? Like, when I invented it, I was just thinking, like, you can tear it easily. But I've gotten a lot of feedback that either one, people would like the option to purchase a tape dispenser with it, so you get that like
idea,
cheap edge, and it can just tear. And I've seen people just use tape dispensers that they have at home to pop it on there. So it's nice.
I can't wait to try it out. I had just gotten it, and I only work with kids 2 days a week, so it's not like I can go in and try it. And because I'm cyber and it's like more like a home care style day, I don't see as many kids.
Yeah.
So
can I ask you for a little feedback? Like, well, you haven't used it, but just looking at it, what are your opinions or thoughts on the sizes of them and the visual cues?
I actually have a document somewhere in my files in my computer that has the dimensions from Handwriting Without Tears and Size Matters handwriting program on kindergarten, first, second, and third grade paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that the black one looks very similar to third grade. The green one looks more similar to second grade, and then this one is somewhere in between. I'm seeing that there might be some wider options for the real little kids.
Okay. Yeah, I tried to go off of the papers I most commonly use with students, and the sizing.
And if you're getting, and I also see that there's different colors here.
Yeah.
If you're going off the paper that you have at school and that's where you got the color choices, that's something else that you may even want to consider is having the same color on the top as on the bottom. But it might be,
okay, go ahead.
As the kids are progressing, it might be just a secondary option. Like they start out and they learn that the blue line or the red line or whatever it is that you're teaching them is one line versus the other. But as they are starting to integrate it, pulling out the one that has the same on the top and the bottom before they progress to the next smaller size. Just a thought, but I don't know how expensive it is to change colors.
Yeah, no, and I just like love getting feedback from people because it's like everyone kind of has a slightly different idea, and if I made one for every idea that someone had, I don't know if there would be enough popularity with each thing. But the idea with the red was that it would be different than the top and the midline, so your eye would get drawn to, oh, this is where my letters should be placed and sit. So
and I wasn't sure if you were using the red as the top line or the bottom line.
I was intending it for the bottom.
Bottom. Okay. That's what Mead uses. If you buy something like at Staples, the Mead has the red at the bottom. And I know some of the writing papers that they have in school are like that. I like
to mimic what's already in the classroom, to try and
exactly
improve carryover.
Size Matters handwriting program has a thicker line on the bottom and a thinner line on the top. Handwriting Without Tears only has 2 lines. So I don't know how many people you run into that are Handwriting Without Tears that you just eliminate one of the lines. I don't know.
I've been trying to get some feedback, so we'll
yeah,
see what happens next.
yeah,
I have some ideas.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it going, the color combinations are interesting. I haven't thought about red, but that's not to say that it's good, bad, or bad. I hadn't thought about red, so there you go.
Thanks.
They use foundations in this area, and then they use green on the bottom. Airplane is orange and blue on the top. So they use the foundations, the Wilson program, the writing program, half is foundations. So,
Okay.
Just
every does it a little different.
Every school's a little different, and not to say that one is better than the other. Highlighting the bottom of one of them, I don't know how much more. Doing a whole strip of ones that have the half highlighted, I don't know what other options you've heard about, but that's another one of those things.
Oh, I have my list of all my ideas, so we'll see what comes next.
But on the same idea, I don't know how many patents you've got to go. Is this 1 patent or is this 3 patents?
3.
Okay, there you go. So every time you make a change, you got to go for another patent. That's expensive.
Right.
So those kind of things are things that you have to think about when you're creating an invention.
For sure.
So just as I'm having this discussion with Meghan, just for the people that are going to listen to this later, ideas are great on paper. Ideas are great in practice. 3 patents? I can't imagine how much money that she's spending on just getting that to take care of. I didn't go with a product per se. I went with a book.
Yeah.
Just as expensive, just a different outcome.
And expensive with your time. My goodness, how long did that take?
I started the actual book in January of 16. And it was published last March. So it's
about 3 years. Yeah.
They say that publishing a book is like having another child. It's like the birth of a child. So
how did that feel?
It was a relief when it was done. But
and you're proud of it now. Yeah.
And people are reading it, and I've gotten really good feedback along the way. It's been an adventure, and I'm quite frankly, I am so surprised at how many OTs have found value out of it. I was expecting teachers and parents to find more value. I am really, really surprised at how many OTs are finding value out of it.
For sure. Yeah, I try to pick it up a few times a week. I have a lot going on, but I probably got it about a month ago, and just every time I can pick it up, I'm like, that makes so much sense, because I guess the difference being in school-based, I have a lot of kids with visual motor difficulties, but one, I don't have the expertise or knowledge, I'm learning now through your book, but of like dysgraphia just seems like something I would like. It just seems like such a big and
it's so
intimidating word that for me to have to explain and diagnose, which is not within my realm, because that's a more medical thing. We wouldn't do that in school-based, but I've kind of always shied away or been nervous when a parent has brought that word up. And I'm like, ah!
Well, hopefully this book and the course will help clarify that for you. Because one of the things that I'm trying to say is I don't diagnose dysgraphia either. I'm a dysgraphia consultant, but I'm not saying that I'm out there diagnosing it. I almost lost the word in my head. But one of the things that got me going was I had so many kids who were reading above grade level and struggling with writing, and I was like not making that neurological connection at first. And it took me a little problem solving to figure out that it was indeed a neurological connection that was the problem. And it's a delay in the connection development. So let's moving on with the word dysgraphia. Now that you have an idea of what dysgraphia is and how it's distinguished from handwriting problems, which it's not far from that, but how much of your day does dysgraphia come up? Like, what kind of impact is the word and the concept of dysgraphia been as you're gaining more knowledge about it? Like, are you seeing it more, or are you just understanding it more and it's more clarified? Like, how's dysgraphia changed your day?
Yeah. So again, I still don't completely, I couldn't confidently explain it, I think, yet. But I'm so interested to learn more, because I do feel like there are some kids on my caseload that, again, if you're listening, I'm not diagnosing your child, but that
they're still showing all the signs and symptoms.
Yeah. Yes. And so I'm still treating them in a way that would target some of those things that are going on, but having probably a broader understanding of why could really help guide my treatment even more. And I'm excited to get to the portion of the book where there's a lot of strategies. I might even jump ahead, because there's still 5 months in this school year where I could really be impacting those kids and their progress. And some of them are going to be moving on to junior high next year. So I want to do everything I can for them related to dysgraphia. And, that word's come up. Some of them have gotten a diagnosis of dyslexia. So, again, I'm not super clear on how much those go hand in hand, like the percentage of like comorbidity and things like that. But, so when that word gets tossed around, then I'm like, oh, and they have like poor handwriting, like, how do I fit into this,
Yeah. Well, I hope that this course and this book really help delineate that for you. The one section on specific learning disability in module 2 would be one that might help that help you out with that one. So hopefully you can glean some good information from that one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna write that down. Module 2.
So how is the collaboration with the special ed staff, the parents, the related service providers? Do you have a good collaborative staff? Do you get a lot of those outliers of parents that are very upset with the school, or is your state really doing a good job of explaining IDEA to the public so that you don't get a lot of misunderstanding going on at IEP meetings?
Yeah, so I have 2 amazing teams at both my sites that are extremely collaborative. I know it's actually not that way throughout even our own district. So I'm very fortunate that my 2 sites have strong teams, and I'm thankful to be a part of that. So I do think our district's done a great job at having the psychs go get training on dyslexia that is coming up a lot more. I'm not a psych, so I don't have ed code tattooed on the back of my hand, but I believe it's something that's more considered within the school eligibility.
Okay.
So again, that word comes up in IEPs, but I think the eligibility would technically be a specific learning disability. So the more that my psychs are getting educated, that's trickling down to me in bits and pieces with the cases that are brought to us, or the students we've worked with for a long time, that the parents are like, but this still isn't explained. Like, what, there's more going on. And so then that's when they've, I've heard the Orton Gillingham come up a lot, and what's that new assessment she uses a lot? I don't know.
That's okay. That's all right.
Anyways, so we're definitely digging more into those.
This will pull it to more together for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So the tagline for the American Occupational Therapy Association month is living life to the fullest. What does that mean to you?
Good one. I think it means a lot of things, but as I mentioned, like, I'm spiritual, so I think my life is already pretty full, and that just in terms of, my marriage, my 2 beautiful kids, and being able to live where I live, which not everyone could do. It's expensive here. And so just not being wasteful of the opportunities I'm presented to do with my family where we live. But that doesn't mean that I don't actually want more, which is why I am pursuing this entrepreneurial business. It's super challenging, and at times I don't feel like I'm living to the fullest because I'm so bombarded and bogged down by all the things I have to do, but I'm just believing it's for a greater cause.
Okay.
Can't get into all of it, but there's been things revealed that are what I'm doing now will be making an impact later. So,
ain't that the truth?
Yeah, I'm on the path.
And where do you think you're going to be in 5 years?
Oh, 5 years. I have so many ideas. I'm waiting to know which one comes next. I think I'll physically still be in California. But, if I had it my way, the things that I'm pursuing now, I would not be working, I wouldn't be employed by someone. I would be doing my own thing, but probably working twice as hard because it's really difficult to be a business owner. But I think as the tagline refers to, I would actually be living to the fullest and fulfilling something that has greater meaning to me. So
lovely. Yeah. I love it.
Thank you.
So I threw that 5 years in there because most people that are entrepreneurs have this vision, and it's the day-to-day details and the slowing down and learning how to isolate that really sometimes can get in our way as entrepreneurs. I saw something on Instagram that you posted today that you were advertising some workshop or something that's coming up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So it was actually last night. So I have a business coach, and she's been amazing. She actually is geared more towards teacher entrepreneurs.
Okay.
But based on some of the relationships with OTs that I'd been building on Instagram, kind of over the summer last year and into the fall, I just had kind of gotten to the place of like, okay, I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. I need some tools. I need some strategy. I need some direction. And a lot of it has to revolve around marketing. I have this amazing product, but how do I get it in the hands of
We've not been taught how to market in OT school.
Oh, not at all. So her name's Alyssa. She's just been amazing, and she just gives me the tools. and the encouragement. It's a very personal relationship. You know, there's just so many programs out there that will offer to do the same thing, but they're just cranking through people, you know, like they might have good content, but there's not, you don't feel the person behind the computer screen as like a true advocate of yours.
Okay.
So
Good. I'm glad that you have somebody that's helping you out.
Yeah, definitely.
So my last question is, do you have a favorite podcast and book that you can recommend for the listeners?
I love podcasts. Oh man.
Okay, let me break it down. One OT podcast and one alternative other subject. How about that? Would that make it harder or easier?
Well, I like a lot of OT podcasts. Okay, now I'm gonna go look on my what have I been listening to lately? There's so many.
While you're looking, okay. I'm gonna tell you one that I did. I was just listening to OT on the Air with not this last one that she published this week, but the one from last week where they were talking about learning styles and the fact that they don't believe that learning styles exist anymore. And it really opened my eyes to some of the things that I say as an entrepreneur and a school system.
Sorry,
I'll tell you what, it's like, wow.
Yeah. So that the On the Air is a Stephanie Lancaster one?
Yes. And it wasn't the one from this week. It you're looking at the podcast now. I want to say Grippa was the interview.
Yeah, okay. I'll listen to that one.
Yeah. And did you figure out which one that you want to recommend?
Okay, so OT wise, there's so many. I don't know. I love them all. Can I say I love a lot of them?
I think you did say that.
I know. Okay. So yeah, it's probably OT for Life or the Sensory Project show. I like those both a lot.
They're very good. They're very good.
Yeah. And then the non-OT related one is Armchair Expert with Dex Shepard.
I've never heard of that one. That's a good one. Thank you.
Do you know Dex Shepard?
No, I don't know Dex Shepard.
Okay. Do you know the show Parenthood?
I think I've seen advertisements, but I must confess I watch channel CBS on a Tuesday night only. I am an NCIS girl, and that's about it.
All right. Well, it's an actor, and he's married to Kristen Bell. There's this hilarious couple, but he interviews some just great, like I just love his interview styles. It's fun, relaxed, you know.
Cool.
Talks about, all different things. So yeah.
We'll have to make sure we put both of those links into the show notes when I go to put it up wherever it is it's going to go live. I'm definitely going to be putting it on YouTube, and then I think I also have to put it on Facebook, but we're going to go from there. So
can I tell you my book too?
You have a book?
Book recommendation.
The favorite book to recommend. Forgive me, I almost forgot. Okay, that was the one that she was like waiting for the drum roll. Okay, go ahead.
That one is because it's just so good. I mean, anything by this author, I love. But Present Over Perfect by Shauna Niequist.
Okay.
Is just when I feel like I'm not doing a good job at anything, like I can just say those words and it takes me to the place where I need to be.
Say the title again.
Present Over Perfect.
Present Over Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, she is an amazing author, Christian author, but I grew up with her. We went to the same church growing up, and I'm just so proud of
somebody
all the
you know
amazing.
Personally. That always makes it so much nicer.
Mm-hmm. So she has awesome. Just look up all her titles; they're all great. But that's one of the more recent ones that really.
Right. Send me her name so I spell it correctly when I go to look.
Yeah.
But Yeah. So everybody, thank you for listening to Megan and I have a conversation about dysgraphia and what goes on in the school system today. And look forward to having you come back to another session. So thank you. Signing off now. Cheri, your dysgraphia consultant.